What is language? Language is defined as a systematic means of communicating ideas or feelings by the use of conventionalized signs, sounds, gestures, or marks having understood meanings. This, of course, includes both sign language and spoken language. How does human language differ from animal communication? Well, there are many reasons. Humans can speak about abstract ideas, the past, and the future. Animals can only communicate about what's happening in the moment. Animals are born with biological knowledge of vocalizations and their meanings. Dogs can growl, bark, and whimper even if they were never raised with another dog around them. Human language has duality of patterning, meaning we have the ability to mix and match phonemes to create an infinite amount of words with an infinite amount of meanings. Animals have a limited amount of vocalizations or signs, with only one meaning attached to each one. Humans can also create new words or signs. We see this a lot with the use of slang. For animals, evolution is the only way new vocalizations or signs can be created. When did humans begin speaking? This is still a debated subject, and there are estimates ranging as far back as 2 million years ago to as recent as 50,000 years ago. So how and why did humans develop language? No one knows for sure, which is shocking. My paper will look at 4 possible theories to see which one is the most plausible. The theories I'll be looking at are the gestural theory, the tool use theory, the putting the baby down theory, and the gossip and grooming theory. I'll give a quick rundown of each theory now. Let's start with the gestural theory. This theory states that human beings began communicating with one another through the use of hand and arm gestures. Since we were still a pretty young species, our less developed brains needed a form of communication that was easily comprehensible and easy to reproduce. Easily reproducible language is key to its spread. Here are the pros and cons for the gestural theory. For pros, we see that there is evidence of gesturing in primates, which is our closest living relatives, as well as in human babies. We do have a form of gestural language in sign language, so it's not hard to imagine our ancestors using a more arbitrary version of that. Plus, studies show that vocal and sign language use the same regions of the brain. Also, as babies, we use primarily gestures since our speech is still developing. As we mature, we still use gestures, but only supplementary. One big con that I will look into researching further is how the gestures turned into spoken language. At what point was the crossover, and for what reason did people start talking more than gesturing? The next theory we'll look at is the tool use theory. This theory was popular in French linguistic schools, especially prior to 1867. In 1867, there was a formal ban on language origin studies done by the Linguistic Society of Paris, so there was a slight decline in popularity. This theory proposed that tool use and language evolved simultaneously and influenced one another. The whole theory is based around the idea of TUS, or tool use sound. It states that humans would mimic TUS, resulting in a limited number of vocalizations that were only associated with tool use. As for pros and cons of this theory, one pro is that there is still sound symbolism in modern languages, like onomatopoeias. Also, in a 2013 study done by the University of Liverpool, it was found that language and tool use utilize similar process centers of the brain. As for cons that I want to try to answer in my research, there is still uncertainty about if language or tool use came first. This is an important uncertainty because the theory states that one influenced the other, but we don't know which one that was. Also, I'm curious to know how words not associated with tool use came about. The putting the baby down theory is based around the relationship of mothers and their children. Due to the evolution of bipedalism, babies needed to be born earlier to fit through the narrowing birth canal. Because they were born earlier, they were less developed than their ancestors and could no longer cling to their mothers' backs. Babies needed to be held and carried everywhere, which hindered foraging practices. Foraging mothers needed to put their babies down in order to use both hands, which would cause the baby's distress. To calm the baby, the mother would babble, or use what Dean Folk calls motherese, to make noise and let the babies know that they were still near. This babbling eventually turned into meaningful language. What this theory has going for it is the necessity to calm restless babies in the wild. Not only are crying babies incredibly annoying, they are also risky and could attract unwanted attention. Also, this theory makes it easy to see how language could be passed on from one generation to the next, which is vital to a language's survival and spread. However, I'm still questioning the reasoning behind how motherese spoken from one mother to her child would be meaningful to unrelated people in the community. The next theory is the gossip and grooming theory. This theory is built on the idea of primate grooming. Grooming is necessary among primate groups because it is used as a way to strengthen social bonds. The practice involves very complex social structures, and who grooms whom can cause enemies or create friendships. Gossip replaced grooming because our ancestors were part of large social groups where grooming would be an almost constant task. Calming vocalizations were used instead of physical grooming, and eventually these vocalizations evolved into language. The fact that the majority of modern conversations would be considered gossip supports this theory. Also, speaking is very energy efficient compared to the act of manual grooming. One reason speaking is so efficient is because you can address many people at once. One thing that I hope to find out with further research is when language went from vocal grooming or relaxing vocalizations to meaningful language. How could vocal grooming fill the void of manual grooming since it was so much less efficient? Also, why was gossip the first type of conversation to evolve? So, which theory is the most plausible? Going into this project, I thought the most plausible was the putting the baby down theory. However, after some research, I can see the plausible aspects of every theory and need to research a little bit more in order to decide which one is the most plausible.